Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino along with Katie Pavlich, Marie Harf, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. The Democrats who really want Joe Biden to go away, well, they might want to buckle up because we're getting another brutal bombshell about the cover-up of former President Biden's mental decline. Privately, advisors debated whether a wheelchair would be required to get him through a second term. The president's doctor privately said that if he had another bad fall, a wheelchair might be necessary, and quipped that Biden's staff members were trying to kill him while he was trying to keep him alive. These revelations shouldn't come as a shock if you were watching The Five during the Biden presidency, and now one of the book's co-authors is using the L word to describe the White House.
Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet.
There are critics, however, that are pointing this out. The Tapper's record on the subject isn't exactly squeaky clean.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
You have
to
no
watch somebody on stage search for
That's so amazing.
questions.
It's so amazing to me that
The Washington Post just put out a piece examining how President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it, while Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally.
Yeah.
I think the question is physically, right?
he's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible.
But that's not all, folks. Joe Biden apparently did not recognize George Clooney at their fundraiser and had to be told who he was by an aide. Now, that is an outrage, isn't it? Which apparently left the superstar shaken to his core. And that was the part that I thought was pretty funny. Like, imagine you're George Clooney, Jesse, and somebody doesn't recognize you. Like, when that happens to you, is it really upsetting?
It is.
How
Meredith.
dare they? And then George Clooney said, all right, I'm going to write the op-ed that does him in.
Did him in. Barack, remember, told him to write the op-ed.
Yeah.
Clooney doesn't do anything
That was
himself.
Denzel Washington.
Denzel. He's the black actor, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So wheelchairs, there's nothing wrong with wheelchairs. I use them all the time at the airport. You don't even have to have a doctor's note. You could just say you're late and they'll wheel you around. You give them $20. It's fine. We were just talking about what we would have called Joe if he was in a wheelchair. Asleep at the wheel. You would have been.
were talking about it.
Yes.
Not
Yeah, it was
everybody.
just me, wasn't it? So I want to just talk to the people that don't watch us. How would I do that if they're watching us? But let me put it differently. Do you like to time travel? Do you like to see the future? Well, I have something in store for you. You can just watch Fox, and you don't have to buy books from CNN, okay? You'll know the future by watching us. That's how this goes. Now, Jake, this is what the media is doing. I wasn't a part of the cover-up. Ron Klain's like, no, it was Dr. Jill. Tapper's like, oh, no, we were trying real hard. It's everybody's pointing their finger. He's getting paid to write a book about what we said 4 years ago. And we had Rand Paul on last night. And Rand Paul was against tariffs. He was against the Muslim plane and the drug prices. And that's fine, because at this company, you can say whatever you want if it's your opinion. We don't have to toe the line here. Now, if you go back 4 years and someone had gone on CNN and said, Biden's brain dead, the lab leak, the laptop, they would have cut your mic and you would have been banished from CNN. Now, being banished from CNN is a badge of honor, but still, you can hear the truth here. If Joe Biden had done decently at that debate, cover-up still would have happened. There would have been no book. There would have been no book advance. We would not be hearing about this. They would just slapped him in a wheelchair on November 6th, and they would have said, see, he's just like FDR. They're both in wheelchairs, and they both defeated Nazis. What's more dangerous? Trump being president, or a secretive cabal of unelected officials controlling the president, using AutoPen and overruling him, and then lying to the public about it?
Yep.
What's more unconstitutional? What's more corrupt? In a way, Trump saved democracy.
That's brilliant.
Brilliant,
and you can
even
say
for
whatever
me.
you want here.
And that doesn't make it right.
One thing that really bothers me, Greg, is that still there's so many anonymous sources, but they're not anonymous because they're worried that Democrats will be mad at them. They're worried that they're going to be caught as liars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That matters at this point. I love that they thought that he needed a wheelchair if he won. Apparently, he wouldn't need one if he didn't win. No, they just didn't care. They didn't care about his health at all. They just worried about the optics, that he would need a wheelchair if he won. I am tired of these books. They should have watched The Five. They should have watched Fox. We were doing the reporting in real time, not right now. The books are now just an admission of guilt. The Dems can never bring up the 25th Amendment ever again. Even if Trump's brain is in a vat in the Oval Office running the country, we're going to say, oh, no, no, no. He's sharp as a tack. But there's this other thing about the media's excuse, which is killing me. The White House was lying to us. Well, duh. Yeah, that's to be expected. It's called spin. Your job is to assume that they're not telling you the truth. You're a journalist. You just don't go, oh, they say Joe's fine, nothing to see here. I mean, you should offer a little bit more resistance, than Facebook asking if you're 18. That's how bad it is. So it's not about the media. It's not about Joe's condition at all. Nobody cares at this point. It's the media's condition. There are two diagnoses. One, you're the dumbest, most incompetent generation of journalists ever on the planet. Or two, you deliberately covered up Joe's dramatic decline because you're biased. That is all you have. There's no in between. I would say, if I were them, I would come clean and go, you know what? We knew Biden was a mess. It was obvious. But as Democrats, we preferred him over this existential threat known as Donald Trump. And they had called him Hitler, which meant anytime they criticized Biden, they would get grief for helping Hitler. So they couldn't actually be honest, or else that would be seen as somehow doing something horrible. But the media, Biden's still alive. The media is dead. Put a tag on their toe, call Quincy, shove the body in a fridge because the corpse, it's starting to reek.
Yep, and who's going to identify the body? Well, I have a suggestion. Chuck Schumer was asked about this, and we have a little sound. Watch here.
You said in June of last year, in my meetings with President Biden, I found him to be in command and impressive and wielding influence to make progress on key priorities. But in that same month, Biden apparently did not even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser. Were you being straight with the American public?
Look, we're just looking forward.
Marie, is that going to cut it for Democrats? I know you want Democrats to win and be successful in the future. Will that help?
No, and I think because I want Democrats to win, and because I think Donald Trump is an existential threat to many of the things we care about, the fact that the people in the White House who agree with me on that, in the Biden White House, they believed this about Trump winning again. They knew how problematic that would be for so many of the things they have fought for. And yet in 2017 and 18, 19, 20, they saw they got him elected, and then they saw the decline continue. And after the midterms, I've talked to lots of my friends who've worked in that White House. After the midterms, there was never a conversation about whether he should run again because Democrats overperformed, right? We did better than people thought we would. Biden took credit, and nobody had the courage in that White House to stand up to him and Jill Biden and say, if you run again, we will lose. And the fact that it got to the June of the election year, and that disastrous debate performance for him to be forced out. I mean, we had no chance at that point, right? Kamala, you can't run a campaign with no primary, being anointed in 100 days. Yeah. And I am, the fact that George Clooney had more courage than every elected Democrat. They made fun of Dean Phillips, right? To say the things.
They didn't recognize him.
Well, but he didn't recognize. Ultimate insult in Hollywood. It sounds like he didn't recognize a lot of people that worked for him. Yeah. The fact that he was the only one to say, I need to write a New York Times op-ed, and all these people, now they're coming out, most of them anonymously, which I agree is I don't like. David Plouffe, God bless him. At least he's willing to be on the record.
At least he's willing to be on the record. This is one of those points where George Clooney or a celebrity could actually say, do you know who I am?
Yeah. You don't even know.
There's so much anger, and I like Joe Biden a lot. I don't like that his legacy will always be this.
It will always be this.
And his team did that to him.
Kate T.
KT.
You're not my assistant, Kate. You're Katie. There are 200 Democratic insiders quoted in here. A lot of them are anonymous. Even their current spokespeople, they want to remain anonymous. They don't want anything to do with this.
Okay. They are still so afraid of just speaking the truth about what happened, that they're not willing to come out on the record on this when everybody could see what was going on. Nobody was courageous. George Clooney wasn't courageous. Barack Obama wasn't courageous. Nancy Pelosi wasn't courageous. Democrats had a choice. They could have had a primary. And instead of having a primary, they were running around suing RFK Jr. and Dean Phillips, trying to keep them off of ballots. There was a choice here.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
They also didn't want a primary because Biden and his team did not believe that Kamala Harris could win.
Well,
Yeah,
after he dropped out. So
Right.
they lost the opportunity on 2 primaries, on the front end and on the back end. They lost 2. So much for democracy. They were all fine with this because they wanted Joe Biden to stay in office because he was an empty vessel. They were allowed to push through whatever they wanted. We still have no answers about who was actually making these decisions. We don't even have a lot of information still on the day that he dropped out and posted his resignation letter for the campaign on Twitter. We don't have very much information about that. So this is about a lack of trust. And for Jake Tapper to come out now and say, oh, well, the White House was lying. Well, so were you. And CNN covered a presidential election. And you don't think that it was pertinent to the American people and important for them to know about all of these details? And now all of a sudden that these anonymous sources and people are willing to talk about it, they want a pat on the back for saying what was obvious. We have more details now, but this was happening. And for now them to say the doctor was recommending there may need to be a wheelchair for the second term, let's not forget they never made the White House doctor available for questioning, not a single time.
Do you think there will be a congressional hearing?
I do. I think there will be. Yes.
Well, we will have much more on this. It's not going to end.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.